Welcome everybody from the Sparx YouTube channel. It's great to have you here with us today. Once again, we're looking at a parking system repository that we've developed and built in Enterprise Architect. The past few videos we've been looking at ArchiMate, and we're going to continue that once again today. And today we're going to look at the implementation and migration viewpoint. Great to have you here today. What can you tell us about the implementation and migration viewpoint in ArchiMate?
Thanks for the introduction, Scott. Always a pleasure to be here. Yes, we're going to be looking at this particular viewpoint, which, as the name suggests, it's about implementation and migration. So the viewpoint is used to relate programs and projects to the parts of the enterprise or parts of the architecture that they implement. So the view allows modeling of the scope of the programs, the projects, and the project activities in terms of the plateaus. So the sort of the points that you reach, almost like milestones. So you can also use the viewpoint in combination with the programs and project viewpoint to support portfolio management, which is an important aspect of enterprise architecture. So Scott, let's dive deep into this one, and we'll make a start by, as always, setting our perspective from the top right-hand corner of the application. Earlier today, I've been doing some database engineering work, and I've got that perspective set now, and I'm going to change that simply using the drop down. I look at the perspective sets. Enterprise architecture is the one that I want, and there are a number of choices there, but I want the ArchiMate perspective. So I'm going to select that. The tool changes its focus to be centered around ArchiMate. So I can expand this on the build this page, the ArchiMate patterns, and you can see here that there are a range of different patterns. The implementation migration viewpoints here might be the key. So we've got an implementation and migration viewpoint there. There is a similar viewpoint up here, the implementation and deployment viewpoint that we've covered in a previous video, but we're going to look at the implementation and migration viewpoint. So you can see there are plateaus mentioned there and gaps and also some deliverables. So let's make a start doing this from scratch, Scott.
Yep. People
in the audience will get a lot of benefit from using the productivity gains from using these patterns. Simply select the pattern and use the Create Model button up here in the top right-hand corner to inject that into their repository. There's a wealth of information inside this document describing how to use the pattern, reference material, and tools that might be useful to use with the pattern. So having said that, I'm going to close this builder page, and I'm going to create a package in the project browser for this viewpoint. So going over to the project browser here, I can see that there's an enterprise node. I'm going to expand that, enterprise architecture. That's exactly where we want to be. And you can see here that there's a number of viewpoints that we've already created in previous videos. So just looking through those, we've got lots of them in the business architecture space, and we can reorder these in any way that we want. We might put the organization one there up the top there. So lots of opportunity to move those around. But the one that we probably want to look at is implementation architecture there. And we can see that the viewpoint that I mentioned earlier, the implementation and deployment viewpoint, is actually there. So this time I'm going to create a new package, and this is the implementation and migration viewpoint. So let's do that simply. We have that selected, implementation architecture selected. We go up to the browser toolbar, which is at the top of the browser window there, and click on the new package icon. And all I do is paste from my clipboard implementation migration viewpoint in there. So you can just type that into the name. We've got that done, and the tool injects that package underneath implementation architecture. So let's get started with the diagram. Again, with that package, that new package selected, I'm going to go to the browser toolbar and select the new diagram icon. I get the builder page popping up again. All of the diagrams are related to ArchiMate, and we see here that there are a number of groups of them, and the little arrows indicate that there are things underneath. And these really are kind of equivalent to the viewpoints. They're the things that we need for a particular viewpoint. And you can see here that there's an implementation and migration viewpoint here, and this is this one, implementation and migration. We select that and say create. What the tool is going to do, Scott, is it's going to give us the elements that are relevant to our particular viewpoint and limit limit the toolbox pages from a lot of the
I
other
can see the
noise.
toolbox has changed, and we've got implementation and migration up the top with
Yep.
a few elements there, like the plateaus and work packages. Yeah.
Exactly what we saw in the pattern that we looked at a little bit earlier. And there are all sorts of other elements down here that we might want to use as well. But these are the core ones. So, Scott, I want to encourage the audience, when you start work on a new viewpoint, it's really quite common, since we've done quite a few viewpoints now, that we're likely to have some of the elements that we need to have in a particular viewpoint already in our repository. So one of the things that I want to look at is a plateau, and you can see here that the plateau element is there. And what I can do is I can use the search facility in the tool by going to the Start ribbon, and I can go to the Explore panel and the search item there. I want to do a search within the model. So I'll click that one, and the term I'm going to search for is, I know that we did some work earlier with plateaus, and we talked about current states and target states and transitions things.
Yep.
So let's just see if we can find an element, plateau element, called current state. And if we've got that in our repository, if we haven't, then we'll need to create it. But let's first have a look. So here you can see the name of the element. Here we've got project viewpoint, current state and future potential, current state physical coin meters. Now you can see that the stereotype is an ArchiMate plateau, which is exactly what we want. So let's use the power of the right mouse click to bring up the context menu. And there it is. And we have a number of options in here. One of them is find in diagrams and find in browser. And we could do either of one of those. So we're going to go find in browser first. And you can see that what that's done is it's popped up the browser here. I can move that over, and you can see this has got quite a long name, which quite often happens with these plateaus because you're describing a lot of the things that are going on in the plateau. So I could also have said right mouse click and find in diagrams, which I'm going to do now. So there it is. And what I want to describe in this implementation migration view is the transition from the current state to transition one. So if we read what that's about, and you can look at the notes or read the name of the element. So the current state is the physical coin meters, manual enforcement, cash only. The transition one, the new state, the new plateau, is this digital payment meters, card and cash payments, and digital receipts. So quite a lot of activity that's going on in there. And we can, again, see the notes that describe that in more detail. But you also see an item that's related through a junction there, which is this technology gap, and another one which is the infrastructure gap. So they're saying the technology gap represents the technical capabilities and systems needed to transition from the physical coin operated meters to the digital payment infrastructure. Okay, this includes the hardware components. So some descriptions there. What I'm going to do, Scott, is I'm going to lasso those elements, and I do that simply by holding my mouse key down, my left mouse key, and dragging that across the elements. I don't need to case them all, like group them all like that. I can simply just touch the elements like that, and they'll all be selected. Having done that, I'm going to control copy. So I'm using my control and C key on the keyboard. I'm going to go back to my empty diagram and now, reuse some of this work that I've got there. So you can see now that I'm creating a new viewpoint for probably a different stakeholder group, but I'm reusing these elements, which is what the game's really about. I can move those around as a group like that anywhere I want. Let's leave those for the moment, Scott, and let's put in some other elements. So what I want to look at is some elements related to work packages. So I'm going to go and look for some work packages that I kind of know exist, and we'll see if they're on this other migration viewpoint, and they're not on that viewpoint. And so this is why this viewpoint's a little bit different to that one. So what we're going to look for now is the installation, the work package to do with the digital parking meter installation, because that's going to be related to this, this particular plateau. So again, let's go to our find in project there. We'll remove that. We can also just go clear the results there. I want to remove that there. I know it's something to do with installation. So let's see if we can find that. I don't need the whole word in. I don't need the whole phrase. I don't need the whole name. I could actually, just leave that off and that would find it. But let's go click on that, and we can see that there are a lot of elements there to do with installation. But the one I'm looking for is a work package. And this does the work here. I can find that with that stereotype there. And there's a work package there. I could also drag this column up, Scott, and group it like that. And I could see that, there's the work package there. And that's the only one that's falling under the work package. So that's a useful thing to be able to do.
So how does that drag and drop work? Does that then categorize all of the list elements based on whatever you drag up there?
Yeah, that's right, Scott. So it doesn't matter what it is. Here we've got a number of classes and activities there, but you can see now that we only have got two types there. If I drag that up there, you can see that they're grouped.
All the activities and classes are grouped together.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So if you wanted to just find things that were written by Stephen Maguire, you could sort by author and do that as well.
Yeah, exactly right, Scott. So there's the author there. I've actually been quite busy on this repository, so I've been doing lots and lots of work. Other people have been working on other parts of the repository, but I've been doing the work on the enterprise architecture. So I'll put that back down again, just drop that back down, and we're looking for that work package there. So again, right mouse click on there and say find in diagrams, and you can see now that I've found those elements in the diagram. So what I can do now is I can just select some of them. So I'm just going to do that for the moment, and maybe I'll get this one that's related to those, and this one here, and I'm just going to drop them into that diagram. So I'll go Control C again on my keyboard and put them into the diagram. Now you can see that they're not related. So this is quite a common thing that happens with the viewpoints. You might have been reusing elements, but you're starting to say new things. So while you reuse elements that have been entered into the repository before, you also can create some new relationships. I'm going to move this one over, and I'll multi-select the entire diagram elements, and I'll move them all over to make a little bit more room. It's very common as you're working, Scott, to be restructuring things. Lots of very helpful tools in the application to help do that. So now I can put in a relationship now between an association relationship between this digital parking meter installation, right, which is this work package, and the plateau. So I can say that we'll associate those two things. So what I'm going to do now, Scott, is get you to do some of your time travel magic. We've seen the basics of how this diagram is constructed, and I'll complete it, and we'll see you back here in a couple of minutes, or a couple of seconds, actually.
Welcome back, everybody. I've done a little bit of time traveling and editing magic, and we now have our completed implementation and migration viewpoint. So, Stephen, can you tell us a little bit about this diagram and how it helps us transition between these two plateaus?
Yeah, thank you, Scott. I'm glad to be back here. You can see from what we did earlier that we got a lot of these elements, the plateau elements and the gap elements, from another viewpoint. And we also got the elements in the lower part of the diagram from the project viewpoint. What wasn't in the repository yet was the connection between the work package elements and the deliverables and things down here. So just to go through these elements, that's a work package. This one here is an implementation event, and here is a deliverable. So we've got a number of different elements. The yellow ones are the roles, so the business roles that are performing these things. So we've got digital parking meter installation that's going to be performed by this installation engineer. So we're starting to connect up, different parts of the repository. So you can see here that we put this line in, this association in, and I can also just create another association between the digital payment development and this transition over here. So I'll do that as an association, and again I can just quickly bend that line very easily. That kind of a look. I can change the width of that line. So from the layout ribbon, the style panel, and this little icon here to say what thickness should the line be. Having talked about the lines, I'm going to use the ArchiMate connector legend that we've put into a number of other viewpoints in our videos, and that's been constructed and I can reuse it on this diagram. I simply drag it from the project browser and sort of under our library section of reusable things. I can drop it there and you can see that it dynamically colors the elements in the diagram, so I can tell exactly what they are. Of course, I can zoom in on that. I can use my pan and zoom window there, panning and zooming in on particular sections of that, to understand what kind of relationships they are. The other thing I might like to do, Scott, is a lot of these ArchiMate diagrams can benefit from adding some graphics to them. So here we've got this connected parking meters, we've got this mobile payment application, and the ArchiMate allows us to change the visualization so long as it doesn't interfere with the communication intention behind the diagram. So again, in our libraries part of our repository, we've got a number of different categories of libraries. We've got checklists, image assets, and legends. We looked at the legend one when we put that one onto the diagram. Let's have a look at these image assets now. And I can look at some of the things that I've developed earlier for other viewpoints. We've got this smartphone app and tap. So that's to do with the digital payment. And so I'm going to drag that from the project browser and drop it on top of this element here. You can see that I get three alternatives: set as alternative image, add as an element with an image, or add as a link. I want to use it as an alternate image to that element. In it goes. It shapes itself to the same size as that element, but we've got the opportunity to make it any size that we want. And you can see now that that's a graphical representation of this cancel or pay in the tap with the phone, using the near field communication technology that allows smartphones to be used as payment devices. So you can see now that that adds a little bit of interest to the diagram and allows business users to relate to the diagram in a more connected way, because they can see these things as a graphic. I encourage you to do that with any of your work, whether it's in ArchiMate or any other language. It adds a lot of expressiveness to the diagram. But
and I notice in the properties it still comes up as a type deliverable, even though it's using a nice pretty picture.
Yeah, exactly, Scott. That's exactly right. So if I go to the project viewpoint there, it is in that one as well, but I could easily change that one back. Let's just do that and see what that looks like. I can simply go to the appearance menu, a right mouse click on the element, and say select an image asset, and I could just simply say none there, and that would then change it back. I can simply resize it to the size of the other elements. And let's have a look what's happened in the other diagram. So implementation and migration viewpoint there, you can see that hasn't altered this diagram. So you're right, it's the underlying element. And if I was to right mouse click here and say find in project browser here, so I can do that with Alt G or just using this menu option, and that's the element there. And if I were to go to the project one and look for that element, even though it looks different, it's going to find the same element, the exact same element there, and go find in browser, and you'll see it there. And
I think it really helps differentiate between a drawing and a modeling tool, where the fundamental elements, exist and are easy to find and contain data, and
exactly right, Scott. There's a very, very fundamental difference. The other the drawing packages are very useful for what they do, but they're not repositories, and they don't allow you to do reuse. And if you rename an element in one drawing, then you have to rename it in the other. And if you happen to have lots and lots of drawings and lots of other spreadsheets that help glue them together, then you end up having to change the name of an element or its properties in many different places. Here we can simply change it in one location, and it will change everywhere in the application. So a big difference, and that's the power of the repository. But that's the implementation and migration viewpoint, Scott. Very useful viewpoint to relate the things, the plateaus that you're working on, and the work packages that are going to carry them out. The events here that are going to go on, the implementation events, and also the deliverables that are going to be produced by those events and those work packages.
Thanks, Stephen. I think it's been really great to see the plateaus and going through to the deliverables, and the diagram's easy to read, and we really have reused lots of elements from other diagrams, making it much easier to build this diagram up in a timely fashion. To our audience, thank you very much for joining us again today. We really appreciate your company. As always, if you've enjoyed the video, we encourage you to like, comment, and subscribe to the Sparx Systems YouTube channel. It's great to see those numbers grow and more people viewing the YouTube channel. If you have any questions about the implementation and migration viewpoint, ArchiMate, or Enterprise Architect in general, you can reach out to Stephen using the credentials in the video description below, and the LinkedIn and website credentials are there. As always, thank you very much for your time, Stephen. It's been great to learn a little bit about implementation and migration, and look forward to future videos.
Always a pleasure to be here, Scott.